Because the passive sampler measures chemicals that can be absorbed by humans and animals, it's a great tool to evaluate if we're being exposed to chemicals in the air or water that are of concern. What's important about this tool is that it measures chemicals that are in the gas phase. For example, routine, which is produced from wood-burning fires, is a chemical usually found in the gas phase. This means humans are exposed by breathing in that chemical. These chemicals are called semi-volatile or volatile organic contaminants. This means they can easily transition into the gas phase. In environmental health science, we can look at gas phase chemicals or particulate matter like coal dust or sand particles. The passive sampling devices measure chemicals in the gas phase. The devices also let us determine the type of chemical, like routine, that's in the gas phase. With the passive sampling device, we can determine how much of a certain chemical is in the air that we're breathing. While the passive sampling devices may look different, they all work the same way. The air and personal samplers measure chemicals in the air, while the water and sediment samplers measure chemicals in the water. The way they do this, though, is the same. The passive sampling device uses the basic properties of chemicals to act like a chemical sponge. It absorbs chemicals in the environment. There is a range of chemicals it can detect. We'll talk about that in a minute. Here's how the passive sampler works and why we use it. Often, people ask how the passive sampling device absorbs chemicals. Much like our skin or lung tissue, the passive sampling device is not solid. It looks like a solid piece of plastic, but it's actually very porous. A passive sampler mimics a biological membrane. If a chemical can be absorbed through the skin or nasal passages, or can be breathed in and be absorbed through the lung tissue, the chemical can also be absorbed by the passive sampling device. In another example, the samplers can absorb chemicals in water, which shows what sort of chemicals fish might be exposed to as water flows over their gills. The chemicals don't stick to the outside of the passive sampling device, they're actually absorbed and then bound inside the passive sampling device. Think of a biological cell. A chemical can be absorbed through the cell layer and then stay inside the cell. This is how the passive sampling devices work. This means chemicals aren't rinsed off of the passive sampling device. The passive sampling device can measure certain flame retardants, personal care products, pesticides, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PCBs, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylenes. We are constantly expanding the number of chemicals that we can detect. Much of this work is focused on polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs. These are formed as a product of incomplete combustion and come from natural and man-made sources. PAHs can be produced by industrial plants and by forest fires. Other PAHs come from petroleum plants or spills, such as oil spills. Many PAHs are of concern to human health. The passive sampler only measures chemicals in the gas phase. Therefore, it cannot measure metals, particulate matter, or mold and mildew. There are certain air pollutants like nitrous oxide or sulfur oxide that also cannot be measured. The passive sampling device also can't measure non-organic chemicals or chemicals that don't contain carbon. An example would be borax or ozone. We have used the passive samplers in a variety of different research projects. Most recently, we put air samplers in rural Appalachia, Ohio, to evaluate air quality around areas where fracking was occurring. For this study, we used two types of passive sampling devices, the stationary air cage and the personal wristband. That way, we can look at the air around the well, but we can also see what an individual's personal exposure is like as they move around their home and their community. Over the past 15 years, we have used air, water, and sediment samplers in Portland Harbor, which is a Superfund site. We've been able to gather data during and after remediation efforts using these samplers. When we pair the water and air samplers, we can actually track the movement of chemicals between the air and the water. It all depends on the project. If you're looking at chemicals in open water, you would use a water sampler. If you're looking at the chemicals a clam would be exposed to, then you're talking about sediment pore water. So a sediment sampler would be the best choice. If you're curious about outdoor air quality in a specific spot, such as near sites of fracking, then the stationary air sampler is most appropriate. Our newest sampler is the personal wristband sampler, and that is best for when your question is unique to what an individual is exposed to. Do the samplers fill up with chemicals? It's a really good question. We call it saturation. We've tested our samplers in some highly contaminated environments for a month and still didn't see saturation. However, even if the sampler did reach saturation, meaning that it would be at the same concentration as the air or water it was in, we would still see the chemicals it was detecting. In summary, passive sampling devices can sequester chemicals that are relevant to human health in the air, water, and sediment. Watch our other videos to learn more about how the air, water, sediment, and personal samplers can be used to answer research questions posed by scientists and communities.